Hello, 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 and welcome to episode 123 of the Mo Money Podcast. I am your host, Jessica Morehouse. Thank you so much for joining me for another episode. You're going to really like this one because I really like this one. I am interviewing Eli Klein. He's the manager of Publicity and Partnerships for one of my favorite apps, websites, and Facebook communities, Bunz. So if you're not a bun like myself and thousands of other people, we are going to get into the nitty-gritty of what Bunz is, how it started, what it serves to do. And it really has an amazing philosophy behind it, which is, I think, why so many people have gravitated towards Bunz. It is not just another, website or app that promotes trading. Kind of, you can do that with a Kijiji or a Craigslist. It's much more than that. It really is about creating communities and relationships and helping each other. That is kind of the core proposition of what Bunz is and why people are crazy about Bunz. Believe me, if you're not already in like a couple Facebook groups, well, you need to, because I'm part of a bunch and I'm just in there all the time seeing what people are talking about. And you just feel more part of your community. There's, one specific to, times in your life, like weddings or locations like Toronto. And you really get a feel for what is going on in your city or what people are going through. So you're going to really love this episode. But before I get to that, here are a few words about this episode's sponsor. So you're racing against the clock to wrap up 3 projects, prepping for a meeting later in the afternoon, all while trying to tackle a mountain of paperwork. Welcome to life as a freelancer. Challenging? You bet it is, but our friends at FreshBooks believe the rewards are so worth it. Let's be honest, the working world has changed. With the growth of the internet, there's never been more opportunities for the self-employed. To meet this need, FreshBooks is excited to announce the launch of an all-new version of their cloud accounting software. It's been redesigned from the ground up and custom built for exactly the way you work. Get ready for the simplest way to be more productive, organized, and most importantly, get paid quickly. The all-new FreshBooks is not only ridiculously easy to use, it's also packed full of powerful features. Create and send professional-looking invoices in less than 30 seconds, set up online payments with just a couple of clicks and get paid up to 4 days faster, and see when your client has seen your invoice and put an end to all those guessing games. FreshBooks is offering a 30-day unrestricted free trial to all of my listeners. To claim it, just go to freshbooks.com/mo and enter Mo Money Podcast in the How Did You Hear About Us section. Once again, that's freshbooks.com/mo and enter Mo Money Podcast in the How Did You Hear About Us section. Thanks, Eli, for joining me on the Mo Money Podcast. I'm excited to talk about Bunz, one of my favorite things.
You're welcome. Thanks for having me.
First, I've got to ask, what is Bunz? Or where did that name specifically come from?
So when Bunz was first born in the summer of 2013, it was called the Bunz Trading Zone, BUMS. And as in, can I bum a smoke? Can I to bum something from somebody. But it was it was decided quite early on that was probably derogatory.
Probably not a good, yeah.
And it was really a kind of a meaningless word that had just, it's a little bit more of a respectful iteration, let's call it.
It's a fun word, Bunz.
Yeah, it is a fun word. And, it's become a verb. It's become a lot of different things. I think people like being a bun. We talk about buns. We use the word very fluidly in terms of talking about the community or what is an unbuns-like behavior, just things like that.
Totally. I know. It's taken on a life of its own. I'm part of a number of the Bunz Facebook groups, and I love when people are like, hey, Bunz, as if we're all buns.
I know. I was thinking about that too in terms of when they're trying to reach somebody specific, hey, biking buns, or hey, money management buns, or hey,
I know.
People who like chili buns.
Exactly. And it's true. It's it's not offensive. It's cute. It's short. It's fun. It's memorable, especially with the Zen at the end. That's interesting. So I would love to kind of know what the story of Bunz and how it's grown to what it is. I didn't realize it started in 2013 because I feel like the first time I really started getting, people started to really talk about Bunz. And it was more at that point, just for the trading zone portion was, I want to say maybe in 2014, 2015. And at the time, everyone thought it was the craziest thing that you could trade a bottle of wine for a house plant.
Yeah, I know. And it just seemed, and people still are pretty amazed by the sort of the novelty of it, I guess. Yeah. And I mean that like novel in like a new way, like a new, that it still is very new to people. I mean, I got on board late 2014. I think I signed on in January 2015 to the actual Facebook group. But yeah, in the beginning, it was really about what Emily, it was sort of what she saw in her community was need, essentially, and that people didn't have money and needed something, a way to get things in their life that they needed. For her, it was a matter of necessity for her life at the time. She was living hand to mouth. She was working at a vintage store, and she had sort of learned resourcefulness about her. She grew up in a large family in Ottawa. It's what her family needed to do to make ends meet. Bunz is really built on talking about not just what you have, but what you need, and also what you wish you had. Mm-hmm. And that's where this sort of symbiosis / sort of serendipity comes in. It connects people. Magic sort of happens. It's kind of oddly organic, but I think that sort of stems from the truly sort of good nature of what bartering is about. Mm-hmm. To take it a step further, I think that's sort of where capitalism maybe sort of fails now. Yeah. And it sort of has no good nature. Good things can come out of people making and spending money, but I think what is left here is a real sense of goodwill that we can all move forward together in life.
Definitely. And also like a big sense of trust, because it's, especially when I first started, I'm like, oh, I don't know if I trust a stranger, like to meet them and to trade something. But it's also like, well, we're kind of a little bit used to that with like Craigslist and Kijiji meeting up to sell your iPhone or whatever. So you got a little bit of that. And I think, like the people that participate in Bunz are, they're kind of a certain type of person. And what I really like too is people are very passionate about it, very involved, and very protective of it and protective of the community. I've seen in lots of Bunz where people will call out other people for like not following the rules or being disrespectful, and then they'll be kind of dealt with or kicked out or whatever. And I really like that, because this isn't, it could have easily turned into a huge, forum where there's just a bunch of trolls and, people that just want to say a bunch of stuff, which is, I think, hard to make sure it doesn't evolve into.
The trolls are still there.
They're still there, but it's not as apparent in my mind. Like, because there's a lot of other things that are way worse. I mean, just like the comment section of any news website.
No, it's true. I mean, we put the community first in terms of their needs. And that started pretty early on, January 2016, I think, is when we first really put the admin team together and wrote the standards, community standards, which still live now. That was a long process of trying to figure out what people's needs were. How can we accentuate trust in an environment which is sort of rampantly anonymous? Mm-hmm. And I think that, and I think we've done an okay job. I think where people sort of still trip up a little bit in terms of trust is when it feels like they are being taken advantage of. And I think that there's a little bit of sort of muddiness there in terms of the type of good they're trading. And you see this a lot with gift cards, right? Gift cards are easily scammable. We don't suggest people use them for obvious reasons, but we also know that we also don't ban them because we know that people get them as gifts and are useless. We were actually talking about that this morning a little bit internally here about a guy who's vegan who got a gift card for Subway from his grandma who refuses to accept that he's vegan. And he's like, I actually just need a yoga mat. But hard for me to trade this.
Yeah.
Because, there's sort of an assumption that it's going to have $0 on it or that there's going to be a whole rigmarole of having to go prove that this is worth what it is. Mm-hmm. So that's a pretty interesting sort of side aspect to it. But yeah, the community standards, which we wrote for Facebook, we adopted for the app. And it really feels like the app has taken a different tone in terms of those conversations, those sort of social conversations aren't happening as much, I think, on the app. But what is happening is that sort of protective nature is much stronger on the app. People call each other out for cash on the app. I go through probably 20 or 30 reports a day of people who have actively gone through and searched the word cash and reported every single post. So it's like people are diligent about keeping the community safe and on brand, essentially. It's their own brand, but they're keeping it on brand.
Yeah, no, I like that because like what it could have easily, like at the start when I just found out about it, several years ago, I thought it was just a trading platform. And I thought it was cool because it wasn't like Kijiji and Craigslist. It was like, there's no money. It's all about trading. And I knew a ton of people. I mean, my husband's, music engineer. He has a lot of artist friends, musicians that definitely are on Bunz a ton, trading gear, trading up gear, finding gear that people don't know is valuable and then trading something that person needs more and then utilizing that, which is like, you can't do that on just like a buy and sell kind of thing.
No, totally. And, and it's funny, I come from the music business. That's where I was before I came to the sort of startup world. And necessity is really like, need is very real in the music world. There's a lot of people struggling, and it's we've definitely seen creative communities flock to Bunz because it really is about resourcefulness, and meeting other people who are also resourceful really lets people get the things they need from other people in similar situations.
So, at what point, so it kind of started as maybe that trading zone. How did it evolve into all of these? Like, how many Facebook groups are there? There's like hundreds, maybe?
Yeah, hundreds. Our last count was somewhere in the mid 200s.
Wow.
And then from there, we sort of have a collective population on the Facebook groups of about 300,000 people.
Wow.
That's just if you combine the population. So obviously a lot of people are double counted in that, but it still is about presence, and it's about showing where people are, or where they've come from. And it's interesting because we've got people who start up zones in other cities and countries just thinking like, oh, it's just this, it's a good club that anybody can join. Really, like anybody who's applying to sort of be an official zone ends up crossing my desk anyway, because I'm the gatekeeper, so to speak, in the community. And I sort of get to say like, yes, this is a good idea, or no, this is not, or whatever. Somebody wrote me last week asking if they could create a Bunz Photoshop contest zone just for the Photoshop threads that appear in trading zone. Yeah. But again, without the audience, you don't have the contest, right? Like,
that's super niche.
The one that was in Home Zone, or was it helping your trading zone last week, there was a photo of a couple at the CNE. It got like 600 likes and 300 comments and a ton of people contributing to it. That just wouldn't happen in a zone with its own dedicated Photoshop.
Exactly.
So we just have to weigh those kind of things. And that's the sort of social aspect of the Bunz universe, the Bunziverse.
Yeah.
That really is very unique to Facebook. And it's really unique to sort of what we've realized is one half of the community. Half of the community really sticks strictly to the app and is there for the function of it, and there for the utility of it, and really appreciates that part of it. Whereas the Facebook group, a lot of it is obviously socially driven. And you're talking about niche audiences. There are some incredibly niche Bunz groups, like the Bunz VHS sewer that only...
Wow. Yeah, that's not...
Or the Bunz nothing zone, where literally any post just gets deleted. Nothing in there.
Why?
I don't know why, right? Just because because it's silly and it's idiosyncratic, and it's very like we let that zone exist for the sheer humor of it, but also that it kind of speaks to the sort of whimsy that exists only in Bunz, that is so unique to Toronto in the mid 2000 teens or whatever, that speaks so much to where our heads are at in this crazy world, that we want a place where you can just go post things to guarantee that it'll just get disappear instantly. The Bunz nothing zone. Oh
my gosh. I've got to say, one group that I'm surprisingly part of, but I most people would think it was weird that I'm part of, but it's like there's a Bunz wedding zone. I'm married. I'm not planning a wedding, but I wanted to see what people were posting because actually my sister's getting married. So I wanted to see just some ideas to help her. But she's getting married soon. So I could technically probably should leave the group, but I'm probably going to stick around because this is honestly one of the most supportive and nicest groups ever. Everyone's so happy for everyone. You know, people like talk about their way to getting married, and then they get married and they show their photos and everyone's like clapping and so excited for them. It's just like the most positive group I've ever been part of. And I'm like, I'm just so happy for everybody.
And there was a really great article in the Walrus this week actually about Bunz Wedding Zone.
Oh, really? Oh, I gotta check it out.
Yeah, it's great.
That's amazing. That's amazing. So Bunz started in Toronto, but is it in different locations, and where exactly is it?
Yeah, so we're in about 40 countries on Facebook, and I mean it's as far as Japan, Israel, Nairobi, Kenya. You know, places that actually have deep roots in barter culture, like India. We haven't actually seen that much activity in terms of Facebook. We have users in India on the app. But it's really, every major Canadian city has a spot. Even places like Halifax have done a lot to spin off into localized zones. Like Dartmouth has their own group, or you know, Pictou County has their own. Like different things around the areas have smaller groups. Social zones obviously is a big thing, and then we've made some forays into the States, but it's still sort of baby steps there. A lot of things that we're learning about in terms of where it works and where it doesn't has a lot to do with human geography. Mm-hmm. It has to do with population density. It has to do with transit infrastructure. You know, places like Toronto, which is easy to get to, where a majority of the audience lives south of Bloor. You know, it's easy to get to people, but you know, in Edmonton, where it takes an hour and a half to get anywhere in the city, if you're not on a bike, it's a little more daunting. And so there's a little slower of an uptake, but I think, I mean, we see steady growth. We see people joining every day. We see people trading every day. And, you know, if that's any testament to sort of how busy our traders are, we have our backend system that is able to see how many completed trades we have in a day. You know, we're still seeing that 700-800 trades are finishing up in a day, which means that 1,500 people are meeting offline in cities all over the world to meet, to trade. Yeah.
So one thing that I think is really cool about Bunz is it really noticed the importance and the popularity that was starting to happen with the secondhand economy. Mm-hmm. It's not about kind of, you touched on it, you know, capitalism, you know, there's a lot of good things, not so good things about it. And it does, I think, especially our generation, millennials, are getting a bit tired of this idea that we always have to make money to buy new stuff. Mm-hmm. And have stuff all the time. Mm-hmm. And I'm exhausted. I don't want to buy any new stuff. And things just don't last as long as they used to, like back in our parents' or grandparents' age. Things aren't, but a lot of things are good. So what do you feel like, I don't know, people are really wanting, in terms of like the secondhand economy? Like, why are people so, I guess, passionate about, especially the trading part of Bunz? Why do you think it's growing so rapidly?
Well, I think it's funny that we sort of balk at the sharing economy label with us, and I'm not saying that's from you. I just think in general, because there seems that just feels like a misnomer in general. Like sharing, I get sharing in terms of like Uber. Like it makes more sense with things about like Airbnb, for example. You're sharing your home, and that makes sense to apply to. But we talk about Uber. You know, you're sharing, I don't know, the space of your vehicle, or you share your vehicle. You're not really sharing your vehicle. You're not giving it to any other people. There is a certain amount of sort of sharing that goes on within Bunz, but I think that there's two sort of drives as to what necessarily draws people to it. One is environmental. Yeah, it feels like a real tangible thing that people can do and feel good about towards climate change. Yep. You know, our community isn't flush for cash. They're not making donations to an environmental group. I mean, some are, I'm sure. And I think that there's something to be said for the efforts that they are making. You know, we have 1 million items. We have 1 million items on the app since we launched in 2016. That's 1 million items that haven't hit the landfill. Yeah. Right? That's 1 million items. We did a rough calculation at the end of last year that figured out that we've successfully diverted the weight of 6 blue whales worth of weight from, you know, it's mostly Ontario landfills. But considering our landfills are in Buffalo, it's also helping, you know, and this is something that we make sure that we know that the community is contributing to. You know, the economics of it is partly what drew me to Bunz, because this idea that you have things on your shelf that are technically worthless to you, makes you question value. Mm-hmm. What is something truly worth to you if it's useless to you, if you don't use it? I mean, if you look even like silly thing on my desk right here is this toilet mug.
I love it.
And I've never drank coffee out of this.
Oh, no?
Almost. Yeah. But it's like, I literally just keep this here for the day that somebody's like, I just need a really kooky mug to trade with.
And you're like, I got it.
I got you. You know, that's not worth anything to me, but it's worth something to future me who's going to drink for a bottle of wine, right? Mm-hmm. You know, and I think that's just something, you know, just to go back to this idea of the Facebook groups, you know, like people came around this sort of ethos, you know, people are trying to have this conversation with themselves about the money and the environment and trying to figure out where we can sort of find a middle ground for our consumption that we're comfortable with, but also like a consumption that fits our lifestyle in terms of financials. I think people are having this conversation and that we should be embracing it and, you know, facilitating it alongside the green question. You know, what can I do to combat climate change today, now?
Yeah.
Right this second, what can I do to save the toilet mug from hitting the trash? You know, what can I do to be part of the solution? And I think Bunz, you know, we might not be the solution, but we are a step in the right direction, and people recognize that and want to be part of that change.
Absolutely. There's nothing I know that exists quite like Bunz. And, you know, aside from the trading part, which I love how, it is like an easy way to be help the environment and promote sustainability, which I think is so important, especially like we're going to have to, our generation's going to have to deal with this for a heck of a lot longer, most of the rest of our lives. We need to start taking action now. But I think, you know, kind of talking more about sharing, what I really do love is it seems like no matter what group you're in, you can share your expertise, your wealth of knowledge and kind of whatever it is. And I think that's really helpful. I mean, as a personal finance nerd, I love when someone's on Bunz Helping Zone is asking like, hey, what's the best checking account? Or I have a question about RSPs. I'm like, oh, I'm on top of this. This is so much fun. This is my jam. And it's exciting that I feel like, I mean, unless you're on a specific personal finance forum, when are you going to ask a question like this? But these are like regular people that just want some help. They feel safe enough to ask a big group of people in Toronto for just like whatever their advice is. And I'm like, I don't think there's anything else like that out there.
Yeah, it's true. And Helping Zone's a very unique space too, because it's really, it came together. I think it was one of the first sort of like side zones. We call them the use cases because people, the use cases of the Bunz ethos sort of spread out in those first few years as really sort of pointedly as like helping zone, home zone, employment zone, right? Things that tangibly, that translate to tangible needs in people's lives. Yeah. And I think that, helping zone in its sort of like Yelp for locals, like recommendations about any stripe of life, from which laundry detergent to use, like who you're going to ask that to. And so where Helping Zone comes in is an interesting way, because if you think about where people are in their life and think about the way that we were raised by our parents, there's a certain amount of like not helplessness, but like people need adulting lessons. Yep. Right. And there's nothing to be ashamed of in saying that, or even wanting that or needing that. I think it's something that generationally we've just missed out on. A lot of people have. Yeah. I mean, I'm on the oldest possible end of millennial. Don't tell anybody aside from your.
I think I'm an old millennial too, because when I find out how young the young millennials are, I feel really old.
yeah, exactly. But it's more prevalent in that end of the generation than any other. Yeah. So when I see people being like, "What laundry detergent do I use?" and there's a lot of helpful people and a couple of like grumpusauruses like me are like, "Read the fucking box." They don't want to read the box. They'd rather hear from their peers which laundry detergent to use. Yeah. So I get that. And that's and it's sort of it speaks to the sort of dual nature of Bunz, which is both super helpful and super not helpful at the same time.
I know. Yeah, that's true. It's funny that you mentioned that.
Really.
Like, we bought our place about a year ago, and it was the first time we've ever had a dishwasher. We've always had just a sink for like 7 years. Mm-hmm. And so we're super excited. But then we do it, and then we're like, these are still dirty. And then it wasn't until like 6 months that a friend of ours told us, well, do you have a rinse agent? We're like, what the heck's a rinse agent? They're like, you can't do dishes without a rinse agent. We're like, we just thought you put the little pot of the detergent in. They're like, yeah, we were doing dishes wrong. Adulting.
Right?
Yeah. It's very embarrassing. All those commercials did not sink into my head about the rinse agent.
Like Jet Dry. It sounds like a plane company.
I know. So Bunz has clearly blown up in the past couple of years. I'm sure Emily, the founder, like, is this what she had, in mind? Or is this kind of like, it just had a mind of its own and she just kind of went with it?
Certainly not. Yeah, I mean, I think it's like I said, the use cases are all community born. Like, we didn't make any of those central zones. Like, we made a bunch of, like, my personal pet project is the Bunz Super Happy Love Zone.
Ooh, that sounds nice.
Positivity, strictly positivity.
Ooh.
And I made it because my coworker Dave made the anger and venting zone. I was like, no, people also need a place to be happy. And we've actually doubled the population of that zone. And so the Super Happy Love Zone is mine. But, if you're talking about sort of popularity, I mean, we don't know why. We're hard pressed to know the actual reason, to be completely honest. I think there lies a certain truth to why people come to Bunz. I think in essence, because they need a thing or need to be rid of a thing or they have something to offer. And, I think people disagree about the sort of finer points of what it means to live in a city. But the community sort of grew around this ethos that we could be doing this differently together, that it doesn't matter what you need or it doesn't matter what you're offering. There's somebody there to take it and there's somebody there to help you. And ultimately what we've sort of boiled Bunz down to is that it's this like urban survival tool. Yeah, it really is about living in a city, getting done what you need to, and having people help you along the way. Exactly. And what I really love about it too, especially like the, very Toronto Bunz zones, is like, you just feel like everyone has the same inside jokes. Everyone knows like, oh yeah, this part of the city, right? And it's like, yeah. And it's like brings you together in an online space where it's like, I may not have ever met that person because I never go to their neighborhood, but we're all in this kind of together, which I think is, I think again, another very important thing for our generation. We really are craving community because it's great to have the internet, but we've been disconnected because of it for so long. So it's nice that we're kind of getting back to, let's get back to something that, we're missing out on, which is community. So, and trying to do it in an online way that's not, anonymous, where you can say whatever, I like that. Yeah. It's kind of getting away from that a little bit. I would love to, before I let you go, find out what's kind of next for Bunz. What can people expect and look forward to? Sure. Well, this month well, it's interesting. So we were talking about use cases. Just a quick step back before I talk about what's next. I'll just recap the last few months. So in January, we launched the City Network. So City Network was this sort of overarching concept that we put together to describe the movement of the use cases from Facebook into the app: homes, jobs, help, and talk. And because we are very much driven by the community and what they want and what they decide, we sort of made an assumption that based on the popularity of the Facebook groups, we could build this into the app. And what we've learned is that wasn't the case. Those zones just simply didn't take necessarily. And we're a very small team. We are 4 developers and a bunch of support. My team is 4. There's 4 developers. That's 8. Yep. we're only a few more than I'm good at. I think in the what we really realized is that people came to Bunz to trade. We want to make trading. We want to be the best trading platform in the world. We want to be better at the transactional side of it. We want to be better at the meetup side. And you go back to your Bunz app now this week, you'll see that it's just trading now. we really have a strong faith in our vision for this in the next coming year or so to really just improve upon the transactional nature of this. And then we'll slowly start integrating some of those features back into the app, because I think people do need them. But right now there's people who do it better than us.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Well, I'm obviously a big fan of Bunz. Hopefully people listening and watching us will get on the Bunz, because it's awesome, and become a bun.
Yeah, we would love people joining the family. I mean, there's a lot of things that people can do aside from joining the groups and the app. There's a lot of real life things we do, like the Bunz Flea, which happens every 3 months. The next one is actually on Halloween night at
cool.
October 31st in Toronto. And, we come and meet some of our maker buns, that we call them. And, our socials are always telling stories, and we want to hear your story. Like if you're just discovering Bunz, you want to tell the story of your first trade, because nobody ever forgets their first trade. We'd love to host that story.
That's awesome. Well, thanks, Eli, for taking the time to chat with me about Bunz. I'm excited for what's next for Bunz, and, I'm going to check out probably that Wedding Zone right after this. I'm curious who got married.
Very good.
And that was episode 123 with Eli Klein from Bunz. You can check them out at bunz.com, and you can download the app to start being a bun yourself and trading at the Apple App Store and the Google Play Store. Make sure to also check out the show notes for this episode. I'm going to put a lot of great info in there so you can learn more about Bunz and how to get involved. All you have to do is go to jessicamorehouse.com/123 for all of that good stuff. And before I let you go, here are just a few words about this episode's sponsor. Did you know that 1 in 3 Americans are self-employed? Because of the internet, it's now easier than ever to become self-employed or start a small business. That's why I was able to take a huge leap of faith and leave my 9-to-5 almost a year ago. What started as my side hustle is now my full-time job, and I can run my entire business out of the comfort of my own home. Now, it has not been a walk in the park. I will not lie to you about that. Going from employee to entrepreneur is not for the faint-hearted. But what has made the transition so much easier in my life is by using software that really fits my needs. That's why I use FreshBooks as my go-to cloud accounting software. It helps me stay organized. I can pull reports within seconds. I can stay on top of payments from clients. And it basically takes a huge weight off my shoulders come tax time. And what's really cool is FreshBooks just came out with an all-new version of their cloud accounting software. And they're offering a 30-day unrestricted free trial to all of my listeners. If you want to take advantage and try FreshBooks out for yourself, all you have to do is go to freshbooks.com/mo and enter Mo Money Podcast in the How Did You Hear About Us section. Once again, to try it out for free, go to freshbooks.com/mo and enter Mo Money Podcast in the How Did You Hear About Us section. So I have another amazing episode for you tomorrow that you will not want to miss. So make sure to subscribe on iTunes or Stitcher or YouTube or whatever you're listening on to not miss that. And speaking actually of my YouTube channel, a couple things. First, I am actually soon headed off to FinCon, where I will be a speaker on a panel, which I'm very excited about. But I'm also up for Best Multimedia and Video Production, the award, the Plutus Awards. I won a Plutus Award a few years ago for Best Canadian Blog, and now I'm up for Best Video Production. So I'm pretty excited. So make sure to subscribe to my YouTube channel. We'll include the link in the show notes, but basically just go to jessicamorehouse.com/YouTube. You can find me, but you're definitely going to want to check it out because I am actually participating in something kind of crazy, kind of cool, kind of adventurous of me. It is called the Money 2020 Payments Race, and I am on the road, and I will be vlogging about it all and sharing it on my YouTube channel. But basically, it's me up against a number of other people, all from Europe. I'm the only person from North America, which is actually pretty cool. And we're starting our race in Toronto. It ends on October 24th in Las Vegas. And all of us have a challenge to complete every single day. So sometimes it is to go to a totally new location. So we can't just go to Las Vegas straight away. And we each have one method of payment that we're allowed to use, and we're not allowed using any other. So, for instance, there is one girl and she has to use Bitcoin. So she has to somehow get to the final destination, do every single challenge, and the only way she can pay for things is by using Bitcoin. And for me, I have chip and pin. So I get to use a credit card and make sure that I always punch in my pin. I can't do the Meg Stripe or the tap or anything else. It has to be chip and pin, which I thought would be easy because that is what we use here in Canada. I thought every other country uses that. And apparently no. In the United States, it's actually not as common as you would think. Why? I don't know. I'm sure I'll find out, figure out what's going on during this adventure. But anyways, that's all to say that I want you to make sure you're following me on this journey. I'm going to be vlogging every single day and uploading new videos every single day to my YouTube channel. So make sure to go to jessicamorehouse.com/YouTube to stay in the loop. All right. Well, I've got another brand new episode for you tomorrow, so make sure to come back for that. And on that note, wish me luck because I'm gonna need it.